Hello everyone and welcome to today's weather video. Now, by the title, you can probably already guess on what I'm going to be talking about today. Yes, it is time of that year again to talk about the upcoming winter season. So without further ado, I'm going to be going through basically region by region of the United States on what I think the winter season was going to bring to certain regions of the country. This is kind of like my own actual, my own personal forecast. I've been looking at other computer models, other forecasts, and then kind of just, taking a little bit of information from each source. And then I'm kind of coming up with my own analysis of what I think is going to happen. So I'm going to, again, start out in the west and move over into the east. I'm not going to go basically state by state by state because there's too much terrain and it takes way too long. But, just like Pacific Northwest, Southwest, and moving over to the east. So what I think is going to happen in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, maybe parts of Montana. Honestly, I think it's going to be kind of a wet and more milder actual winter coming up. Moving down into the southwest over toward the coast of California and everything, I actually think it's going to end up being a little bit sunnier and drier. Now, over in the actual desert Southwest, this year we really haven't had a monsoon, honestly. Unfortunately, I think it's going to stay dry throughout the fall and winter months, really. Not a whole lot of rain opportunities coming, which really doesn't help because there are currently, I checked this morning, I think there's 88 fires raging out in the western United States, which is really, really bad. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of acres being burned, and honestly, they could use a lot of rain right now. I just don't think coming into the winter months, it's not going to really happen. So hopefully we get a couple of storms. Now, if you live on the West Coast, you have parades of storms coming onshore during, parts of the actual, year and everything. Hopefully during the fall months, you guys get some storms that will bring rain, and hopefully that can ease some of the fires going out on the west. But coming into the winter months, I don't think it's going to be very rainy. Obviously, this is the rainy time of the year and it's going to be ending very soon. So unfortunately, I don't think, if you live in the desert Southwest, it's going to be a whole lot of relief coming, your way. Doesn't really bode well, I think, for the ski resorts. Now, with coronavirus still going on, I know that the ski resorts last year, they closed down and everything because of, COVID-19. This year, honestly, when you're skiing and snowboarding, everyone has winter gear on. And so you kind of are almost required to wear face covering. So I'm pretty sure ski resorts can reopen this year. Maybe not full capacity, but I'm really hoping that, they open to some capacity and let people skiing because, it's a very fun sport if you've done it. I'm a skier myself. Haven't gone in a few years, but I would actually like to get back into it. But I think for the West Coast, maybe not a whole lot of natural snow. I know that, they can make their own snow and everything, but precipitation-wise, I think a little bit below average. Rockies and everything, I think it's going to be kind of more of a typical kind of year. We usually get storms coming out of the Canada, and they usually sweep down into the Rockies, eastern part of the Rockies, into the middle section of the country. And I think it's going to be kind of a normal year when it comes to winter storms for the actual parts of the Rockies, northern and southern. And temperature and precipitation-wise, I think it's going to be pretty much average of what you normally see. So Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Denver, down into New Mexico. Honestly, I think it's going to be a normal kind of winter this year. Going into the upper Midwest, this is where I think we're obviously, people up here know it gets cold. Very, very, very cold sometimes. Negative temperatures are very common during the actual winter months. This year, I think it's going to be just as brutal as you normally will get in the actual Midwest. The Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska. So you're going to get shots of cold air, obviously, coming in from Canada and everything. And I do think it's going to be a more typical kind of storms, basically, again, coming out from the Canadian provinces and coming down into the Midwest. I think it's going to be not above or below. I think it's going to be pretty much average kind of like precipitation as, you know, snowfall, obviously. So I think it's going to be a good, healthy winter if you live in the upper Midwest. Coming into the Central Plains and Southern Plains, that's where you get more of the mix and everything. As you know, if you live in places like Kansas, Oklahoma, going down to Texas, Missouri, and all that stuff, obviously, you know, you can get snow, but you can also get, you know, rain during the winter months. That's kind of more of like the, oh God, what kind of, the transitional zone. I had to think there for a second. So more of like a mixture of rain, snow, and then you have obviously, you know, the sleet and ice, which is not good. Ice is the worst when you come into winter precipitation. It just coats everything and it makes everything slip and slide. It's not good at all. Again, I think it's going to be more average temperatures. However, average precipitation. When you go further into the Southern Plains, however, I think it's going to be a little bit warmer than normal this winter. So I don't think places like Dallas, Oklahoma City are going to see like maybe snow. I think it's going to be more of that, you know, icy wintry mix if you do get an actual like winter storm or two. But I do think precipitation is going to be normal to maybe a little bit above normal coming into the Southern Plains. Going over into the Great Lakes and over into the Ohio River Valley, I think it's going to be, again, typical winter this year, maybe a little bit more milder. This year, they're actually predicting about a 40 to 60% chance of a La Nina. La Nina is basically the opposite of El Nino. I'm actually going to do a video on this in the upcoming week or so, just to kind of explain it more. But in El Nino years, that's where you typically get like the big snowstorms, because you have the trough building up in the west and dipping down into more of the eastern part of the country. That's where you get a huge nor'easters, coastal storms basically, and they dump feet and feet of snow mainly in the eastern part of the country, and it brings more typically colder air with it. La Nina is the opposite of El Nino, so usually it brings more milder Pacific air to the actual central and eastern part of the actual country. So I think this year, definitely east of the Mississippi, it's going to be probably a little bit more milder than you're normally typically see. However, I do think precipitation is going to be pretty much normal for the time during the winter, obviously. So I think it's going to be average snowfall around the lakes. Obviously, if you live around the lakes, you get lake effect snow, very typical and everything. I think that's going to be, you know, ramping up. Obviously, you know, when you go into, you know, November and December, I think it's going to be, you know, typical, maybe a little bit more above average and everything. When you have a little bit more warmer air going over kind of like the cooler waters and everything, it kind of just enhances the atmosphere a little bit more. So you actually get typically heavier snowfall. And I think that's going to happen this year going into the winter months in the Great Lakes. Ohio River Valley going down to the Tennessee River Valley, and again, Mid-South and Deep South down into the Gulf of Mexico, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. Thunderstorms, I think it's going to be kind of more of a rainier, actually, winter this month. I don't think a whole lot of cold air is going to get into the actual deep South. There have been years where it gets cold enough where it snows down on the Gulf Coast. I don't think this year really is going to be that year to see, you know, snowflakes flying like in the panhandle of Florida. So yeah, sorry if you live in Pensacola, Florida, and you like to see a snowflake or two during the winter. I don't think it's going to really happen this year. You never know. Weather obviously changes every single second, so could happen, but I think the odds are very low that we're going to see a whole lot of wintry mess in the Deep South. So basically, you know, again, like Dallas going over into like Little Rock, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, they sometimes get a couple inches of snow. Usually a lot of ice storms around Atlanta and everything. I don't think it's going to really happen this year, though. I think it's going to be kind of just, you know, thunderstorms and rain, basically, as systems move on through the area. Now, I think for the Mid-Atlantic, DC, where I live, this year, if any of you are watching here in DC, last year sucked as snowfall comes. We didn't even get an inch of snow. Places in like Virginia Beach in Norfolk saw like 6 inches of snow last year. Places in the Carolinas saw more snow than DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia. Like the whole I-95 corridor just sucked when it came to snow last year, just because a lot of the storm tracks were just missing us. They were going way more north and everything. Now, this year, I think that for especially the Mid-Atlantic, it's going to be a more typical year. I think it's still going to be a little bit more on the mild side with La Nina, but I think it's also going to bring maybe enough precipitation where we're going to probably see an average snowfall here in the nation's capital. So again, snow lovers like myself, that's a good sign and everything. I don't think a whole lot of big coastal storms are going to happen. They didn't really happen a whole lot last year over into like off the Carolina coast and everything. A lot of them happened right off the New England coast and kind of just moved into the Canadian Maritimes. So I think this year with just, if La Nina actually does develop and everything, it's just going to bring a little bit more milder air. And sometimes the precipitation can be a little bit more drier, but I don't think it's going to be as dry as last year. Last year, just, I don't know where the moisture was. It just was a very mild and just not a good winter for the Mid-Atlantic and basically like anywhere along the East Coast up to Boston. I think the whole Northeast, interior Northeast, I think they're going to get a good amount of snow this year, especially better along the I-95 corridor again. And I think it's going to be also colder in the Northeast, mainly like New England and interior Northeast. Again, Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Southeast, I think it's going to be more typical temperatures, maybe a little bit more milder. But I think in the Northeast, I think you're going to get more shots of colder air coming in from Canada. So I think it's going to be a little bit more snowier and a little bit more colder. Yes. So that pretty much is, oh, and then down here in Florida, oh, I don't want to forget Florida, obviously. Florida, I think it's going to be a mild winter. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of cold shots into into the Florida Peninsula. A couple of my friends live in Tampa and everything, Daytona Beach. I don't think you're going to be seeing, again, any snowflakes flying. Maybe getting down to, you know, the 30s and 40s a couple of times, but I don't think there's going to be any real big outbreaks of cold there. In all honesty, I think the whole cold is going to be confined into the Midwest, upper Midwest, and the Great Lakes this year. That's where I think we're going to get a lot of the actual, like, brutal cold. I don't think it's going to be very record-shattering this year. I just think we're going to get quite a few cold shots. So, obviously, winter is winter. You got to bundle up and everything when you go out there. But I don't think overall for the whole entire country, I don't think it's going to be very, very extreme. I just think that if it were to get extreme, I think the West is going to be pretty much more high and dry. And then the middle parts and the eastern parts of the country could see cold and snowy if it were to go more extreme like it sometimes does. So that is my forecast for the whole entire country. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I will be doing another video on El Nino and La Nina, basically the differences and everything, in a new weather video in the next week or so. So go ahead and like this video if you liked it. And then if you have any specific area in the country that you would like me to actually just, you know, forecast for you, basically what I think maybe your city may be experiencing this winter, you can comment in the comment section down below and let me know. Other than that, have a fabulous day. Remember to keep your eye to the sky and stay safe out there.